The day Aunt Eleanor died, I was elbow-deep in garden soil, planting the heirloom roses she'd given me for my birthday. My phone buzzed 3 times before I finally pulled off my gloves to answer it. "Miss Blackwood?" A formal voice I didn't recognize. "This is James Morton, your Aunt Eleanor's attorney. I'm afraid I have some difficult news." My heart stopped. The roses suddenly felt heavy in my hands. Eleanor's last gift to me. "What happened?" "Your aunt passed away in her sleep last night. He hesitated. She left explicit instructions for me to contact you first, before anyone else in the family." I sank to my knees in the dirt, barely registering his words. Aunt Eleanor, the woman who taught me to read, who'd snuck me chocolate chip cookies during dreary family functions, who'd supported every dream I'd ever had, was gone. "Miss Blackwood, are you there?" "Yes, I managed. I'm here." What do you need me to do?" "Your aunt left specific instructions about her funeral arrangements." And another pause. "She left you a letter that must be opened before the service. Would you be able to come to my office today?" I looked down at the roses. Queen Elizabeth variety, Eleanor's favorite. She'd handed them to me just 2 weeks ago, her eyes twinkling with her usual mischief. "These have been in my family for generations," she'd said, "just like secrets." At the time, I'd thought it was just another of her cryptic comments. Now, I wasn't so sure. "I'll be there in an hour," I told the lawyer. James Morton's office was exactly what you'd expect from someone who handled old money. All dark wood and leather-bound books, with a view of the city skyline that probably cost more than my yearly salary. He stood as I entered, offering a sympathetic smile. "Miss Blackwood, thank you for coming so quickly. Please, have a seat." I sat in one of the plush leather chairs, trying not to fit it. "Mr. Morton, what's this about? Why did Aunt Eleanor want you to contact me first?" He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out 2 envelopes. One was thick, official-looking, with the law firm's letterhead. The other was smaller, cream-colored, with my name written in Eleanor's elegant handwriting. "Your aunt was an unusual woman," Morton said carefully. "Brilliant in business, but also quite particular about how things should be done. She left very specific instructions about her will and her funeral arrangements." "That sounds like Eleanor," I said softly. He slid the cream envelope across the desk. "She wanted you to read this privately. Then we can discuss the rest." My hands trembled slightly as I picked up the envelope. Eleanor's distinctive perfume, roses and vanilla, still clung to the paper. I opened it carefully, pulling out a single sheet of her personal stationery. "My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, I've finally run out of time. Don't be sad. I've lived exactly the life I wanted, which is more than most people can say. But I need one last favor from you, my darling niece. At my funeral, you'll need to read a letter. One that will change our family forever. You'll find it in the hidden compartment of my jewelry box, the one I showed you how to open when you were 12. Remember the trick with the rose carving? Some people might call this revenge, but I prefer to think of it as justice. Long delayed, perhaps, but justice nonetheless. The truth is, I've left everything to you. Montgomery Industries, my personal assets, all of it. But there's one condition. You must read that letter at my funeral with the entire family present. No exceptions. I know this is a lot to ask, especially now. But you've always been the strong one, Olivia. The honest one. That's why it has to be you. All my love, Aunt Eleanor. P.S. Don't let them bury me in anything beige. You know how I feel about beige. I read the letter twice, then looked up at Morton. She left everything to me. He nodded, opening the official envelope. Montgomery Industries, her personal estate, investment portfolios, approximately $89 million in total assets. But as she mentioned, it's conditional on you fulfilling her final request. My head spun. Eleanor had always been generous with me, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. What about the rest of the family? My father, my cousins? There are some small bequests, but the bulk of the estate is yours, assuming, of course, you agree to her terms. I thought about my father, who'd always resented his younger sister's success. About my cousins, who'd spent years sucking up to Eleanor, hoping to inherit her fortune. About all the family gatherings where Eleanor had sat quietly, watching everyone with those knowing eyes of hers, like she was waiting for something. When is the funeral? I asked. 3 days from now. Your aunt was very specific about the arrangements. The service will be held at St. Michael's Cathedral, followed by a reception at her estate. The entire family is expected to attend. I stood up, clutching Eleanor's letter. Then I should go. I have a jewelry box to find. Morton called after me as I reached the door. Miss Blackwood? One more thing. Your aunt asked me to tell you. She said you'll know what to do with the truth. The drive to Eleanor's estate took 40 minutes, but it felt like hours. My mind raced with questions. What was it in that second letter? What secret was so important that Eleanor would make it a condition of her will? The gates opened automatically as I approached. Eleanor had given me the access code years ago, saying she trusted me more than her security system. The house was exactly as I remembered. A sprawling Victorian mansion set amid perfectly manicured gardens, with Eleanor's beloved roses climbing every available surface. Mrs. Peters, the housekeeper, met me at the door. Her eyes were red from crying. Oh, Miss Olivia, I'm so glad you're here. She left instructions that you were to have full access to her rooms. Thank you, Mrs. Peters. I won't be long. Eleanor's bedroom was on the second floor, overlooking her prize, rose garden. Like everything else about my aunt, it was elegant but full of hidden whimsy. Silk curtains in bright patterns, modern art next to family portraits, and everywhere, touches of her beloved roses. The jewelry box sat on her dresser, exactly where it had always been. Beautiful Brazilian rosewood, carved with intricate floral patterns. I ran my fingers along the edge until I found it. The small rose carving that concealed the release for the hidden compartment. Third petal from the left, I whispered, remembering Eleanor's instructions from all those years ago. There was a soft click, and a panel in the bottom slid open. Inside was another envelope, sealed with wax and marked to be read at my funeral. My hand shook as I picked it up. It was heavier than I expected, and I could feel what seemed like photographs inside. For a moment, I was tempted to open it right there. But I knew Eleanor. Everything she did had a purpose. If she wanted this revealed at her funeral, in front of the whole family, she must have had her reasons. I slipped the envelope into my bag and took one last look around the room. On the bedside table was a framed photo I'd never seen before. Eleanor as a young woman, standing in front of Montgomery Industries' first office. She was smiling that knowing smile of hers, the one that always made me feel like she could see right through people's pretenses. What did you know, Aunt Eleanor? I whispered to the photograph. What secret was worth waiting a lifetime to reveal? The next 3 days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements and family drama. My father called 6 times, alternating between concern about my involvement in the arrangements and barely concealed anxiety about the will. My cousins sent a barrage of text messages, each one more transparently self-interested than the last. Through it all, I kept Eleanor's sealed envelope close. At night, I'd take it out and look at it, wondering what revelations it contained. What truth was so important that Eleanor would stake her entire legacy on its revelation? The morning of the funeral dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a deep blue suit, Eleanor's favorite color, and pinned one of her prized roses to my lapel. The envelope felt heavy in my bag, like it was weighted with more than just paper and photographs. St. Michael's Cathedral was packed by the time I arrived. The Montgomerys were old money, and Eleanor had been a prominent figure in both business and philanthropy. The pews were filled with a mix of family, business associates, and city officials. My father intercepted me as soon as I entered, his face tight with anxiety. "Olivia, we need to talk about the will. Morton won't tell us anything. Says we have to wait until after the service." "What's going on?" I met his eyes steadily. "We'll all find out together, Dad. That's what Aunt Eleanor wanted." He grabbed my arm as I tried to pass. "Olivia, if you know something." "Let go, Dad," I said quietly, but firmly. "This is Eleanor's funeral. Show some respect." The service itself was beautiful, exactly as Eleanor would have wanted it. No beige in sight. The flowers were all roses in deep reds and vibrant pinks, her favorite colors. The minister spoke about her generosity, her intelligence, her dedication to making the world better. Finally, it was time. Morton caught my eye from the front pew and gave a slight nod. My hands trembled slightly as I walked to the podium, Eleanor's envelope clutched in my hands. The cathedral fell silent as I faced the congregation. My father sat in the front row, his face a mask of barely controlled anxiety. Next to him, my cousins John and Rebecca leaned forward eagerly, like vultures awaiting their next meal. I took a deep breath, breathing in the scent of roses that filled the air. In that moment, I could almost feel Eleanor standing beside me, giving me strength. Before she died, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. My Aunt Eleanor left me a letter with specific instructions. She wanted it read here today, in front of everyone who knew her. I broke the wax seal slowly, aware of hundreds of eyes watching my every move. Inside were several sheets of paper, and as I'd suspected, photographs. As I pulled them out, I heard my father make a strangled sound from the front pew. The first photograph showed a young Eleanor standing next to a man I didn't recognize. They were both smiling, holding up what looked like blueprints. The second photo showed the same man at what appeared to be a construction site, with the early foundations of what I now recognized as Montgomery Industries' first building. "My name was Eleanor Montgomery," I read from the letter. "And this is the truth about how Montgomery Industries began." My hands were steady as I began reading Eleanor's letter, my voice carrying clearly through the hushed cathedral. "My name was Eleanor Montgomery, and this is the truth about how Montgomery Industries began. The man in these photographs is Harold Bennett, a brilliant engineer and my business partner in 1975. He was also the true founder of what would become Montgomery Industries." A murmur rippled through the congregation. In the front row, my father's face had gone completely white. "Harold and I met at university." I continued reading. "We shared a vision of creating sustainable building materials that would revolutionize the construction industry. Harold had the technical genius, and I had the business acumen. Together, we created the foundation of what Montgomery Industries would become. I pulled out another photograph, this one showing Eleanor and Harold shaking hands over what appeared to be a contract. We were equal partners, splitting everything 50-50. The patents, the company, the profits, all of it was shared between us. Until the night of October 15, 1976, when Harold died in what was reported as a car accident. My father started to stand, but my Uncle James pulled him back down. I kept reading. But it wasn't an accident. The brake lines in Harold's car had been cut. I discovered this too late, after the police had already closed the case. I also discovered something else. Papers had been filed just hours before Harold's death, transferring his entire share of the company to the Montgomery Family Trust. Papers that bore his signature. I looked up, meeting my father's eyes directly. A signature that I now know was forged by his business partner at the time, my own brother, Richard Montgomery. The cathedral erupted in gasps and whispers. My father stood up, his face contorted with rage. "Stop this immediately," he shouted. "This is slander." "No, Dad," I said calmly. "This is truth. Aunt Eleanor left proof." I held up a stack of documents from the envelope. The original contract between Eleanor and Harold. Forensic analysis of the forged documents. Police reports that were buried. Bank transfers. She kept everything. Why? The question came from my cousin John, who was staring at his uncle, my father, with dawning horror. Why reveal this now? I turned back to Eleanor's letter. "I'm revealing this now because I've spent 45 years building this company into something Harold would have been proud of. I've used our success to fund research, to support sustainable development, to create opportunities for brilliant minds like his. But I've also spent 45 years watching my brother profit from his crime, watching him raise his children to believe that privilege and power put them above the law." My father had sunk back into his pew, all the fight gone out of him. I continued reading. "The truth is, I should have come forward years ago. But by the time I had gathered all the evidence, the company was employing thousands of people. Going public would have destroyed not just Richard, but countless innocent families who depended on Montgomery Industries for their livelihood. So I made a different choice. I decided to wait, to build, to make sure that when the truth finally came out, the company would survive it." I pulled out one final document from the envelope, a yellowed envelope addressed to Harold Bennett's only surviving relative, his daughter Sarah. Which brings me to my final confession. Over the years, I've kept track of Harold's daughter. I've anonymously funded her education, her research, her work in sustainable engineering. I've watched her grow into the kind of brilliant, ethical scientist her father was. Sarah Bennett now runs one of the most innovative green technology firms in the country, though she's never known who was backing her. More guests filled the cathedral as a woman stood up from the middle pews. She was about my age, with Harold's dark eyes and determined expression. Eleanor had arranged everything, even ensuring Sarah Bennett would be here for this moment. The second part of my will, I read, my voice growing stronger, leaves a 30% share of Montgomery Industries to Sarah Bennett, as partial restitution for what was stolen from her father. The controlling interest goes to my niece Olivia, the only member of the Montgomery family who has shown the same commitment to ethics and innovation that Harold and I once shared. I looked up at the stunned faces before me. The letter is signed, Eleanor Montgomery, co-founder of Montgomery Industries and keeper of its greatest shame. The silence that followed was deafening. Then slowly, Sarah Bennett began walking toward the front of the cathedral. She stopped in front of my father, who seemed to have aged decades in the past few minutes. All these years, Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly. I thought my father was a failure who abandoned his work. I never knew. Never imagined. Miss Bennet, I said, stepping down from the podium. I'm so sorry for what was taken from you. She turned to me, tears in her eyes. Thank you for having the courage to read that letter. Your aunt? She was watching over me my whole life, wasn't she? She was trying to make things right, I said softly, in her own way. The next few hours passed in a blur. The reception was unsurprisingly tense, with family members splitting into factions. Those who demanded the letter be suppressed, those who insisted on going to the police, and those who simply sat in stunned silence. My father disappeared immediately after the service. I wouldn't hear from him for weeks, not until he checked himself into a rehabilitation facility, finally facing the guilt he carried for 45 years. In the months that followed, the truth about Montgomery Industries' founding became public knowledge. But Eleanor had been right. The company was strong enough to survive it. With Sarah Bennet's technical expertise and my commitment to Eleanor's vision, we began a new chapter in the company's history. 1 year after the funeral, I stood in Eleanor's rose garden, now blooming more beautifully than ever. Sarah had joined me for what had become our weekly meeting, where we discussed everything from company strategy to our shared love of sustainable innovation. You know what's strange? Sarah said, gently touching one of Eleanor's prized Queen Elizabeth roses. I always felt like someone was looking out for me, guiding my career from afar. I used to think it was my father's spirit. Now I know it was Eleanor. She tried to protect everyone, I said. The company, its employees, you, even my father in her own way. She just couldn't let the truth die with her. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Do you think she made the right choice? Waiting all those years? I considered the question carefully. I think she did the best she could with an impossible situation. She turned a company built on fraud into a force for good. She made sure you were taken care of. And in the end, she made sure the truth came out on her terms. And what about you? Sarah asked. Do you ever regret being the one who had to reveal it all? I looked out over the rose garden, remembering Eleanor's knowing smile, her cryptic comments, her quiet strength. No, I said finally. Eleanor chose me because she knew I could handle it. She knew I'd understand that sometimes doing the right thing means facing uncomfortable truths. She would be proud of what we've built, Sarah said, gesturing toward the Montgomery Industries building visible in the distance. A real partnership, just like she and my father intended. I smiled, touching one of the roses Eleanor had given me, now blooming in her garden. She once told me these roses had been in her family for generations, just like secrets. But maybe it's time for new traditions. Truth instead of secrets. Partnership instead of power. Building something together instead of taking from each other. Sarah squeezed my hand. I think both our fathers would like that. That evening, as I sat in Eleanor's study, now my study, going over company reports, I found a small note tucked into her old desk calendar. It was dated the day she died, written in her elegant hand. Dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, you've done what I asked. You've faced the truth and handled it with grace. That's why I chose you, not just to inherit the company, but to make it better than it was, to make it what Harold and I dreamed it could be. The roses in the garden will bloom again next spring. When they do, remember that beauty can grow from even the darkest soil, if we have the courage to plant it. All my love, Eleanor. I placed the note carefully in my drawer and looked out at the garden, where the setting sun painted the roses in shades of gold. Eleanor had left me more than just a company. She'd left me a chance to right an old wrong, to build something meaningful, to prove that it's never too late for truth to bloom. Tomorrow, there would be meetings and decisions and all the responsibilities that came with running a multi-million-dollar company. But for now, I sat in the quiet of Alina's study, surrounded by the scent of roses, knowing that sometimes the heaviest inheritances aren't measured in money, but in the weight of the truths we choose to carry. And like Eleanor, I would carry this truth with grace, using it not to destroy, but to build, not to punish, but to heal, creating something beautiful from the soil of the past. After all, that's what Eleanor had done. That's what she had trained me to do. And somewhere, I knew, she was watching with that knowing smile of hers, proud that her final secret had finally found its way into the light.
I never thought I'd see my parents again after they abandoned me at age 8. That day is burned into my memory forever. Mom and Dad dropping me off at Grandma Rose's house with just a small backpack of clothes, promising they'd be back soon. "We just need some time to sort things out, Emma," Mom had said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Be good for Grandma." They never came back. The first few months were the hardest. Every day, I'd sit by Grandma's front window after school, watching cars drive by, hoping the next one would be them. Every night, I'd cry myself to sleep, wondering what I'd done wrong, why I wasn't good enough for them to stay. But Grandma Rose was my saving grace. "You're perfect just as you are, my sweet girl," she'd tell me, wiping away my tears. "Some people aren't ready to be parents, and that's not your fault. But I'm here, and I'll always be here." Grandma Rose wasn't just any grandmother. She was brilliant, sophisticated, and as I later learned, incredibly wealthy, but you'd never know it from how she lived. Our home was modest. She drove an old Toyota, and she still worked as a high school principal because she loved shaping young minds. The only hints of her wealth were her impeccable taste in art and the way she'd sometimes casually mention her investments while reading the financial papers. Under Grandma's care, I flourished. She encouraged my love of science, hired tutors when I struggled with math, and celebrated every achievement, no matter how small. When I won first place in the state science fair at 13, she threw a huge party and invited all my friends. "That's my girl," she beamed, hugging me tight. "You're going to change the world someday." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Grandma and I against the world. She never spoke badly about my parents, but she made sure I knew their absence wasn't my fault. "Sometimes people make choices they can't take back," she'd say wisely. "But those choices reflect on them, not on you." I stopped thinking about my parents, stopped hoping they'd return, stopped caring why they left. I had Grandma, and that was enough. She was more than enough. Then came my 18th birthday. Grandma threw me an elegant party at her favorite restaurant, invited all my friends, and gave me a beautiful necklace, a delicate gold chain with a small key pendant. "This is more than just jewelry, Emma," she said mysteriously. "Keep it safe. You'll understand when the time comes." I didn't know then that it would be our last celebration together. 3 months later, Grandma Rose collapsed at school. By the time I reached the hospital, she was gone. Heart attack, the doctor said. Quick and painless. But the pain I felt was anything but quick. It tore through me like a hurricane, leaving nothing but emptiness in its wake. The funeral was beautiful, just as Grandma would have wanted. Her former students filled the church, sharing stories of how she changed their lives. I sat alone in the front row, clutching the key necklace she'd given me, trying to be strong like she taught me to be. That's when I saw them. My parents walked into the church like they belonged there, like they hadn't abandoned their daughter a decade ago. Mom's hair was grayer, Dad had gained weight, but I'd have known them anywhere. My heart stopped, then started racing. They made their way toward me, faces full of what looked like concern. "Emma, sweetheart," Mom said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away instinctively. "We came as soon as we heard. We're so sorry about your grandmother." Dad nodded solemnly. "We know it's been a long time, but we're here now. You'll come home with us, of course. You're still a minor for a few more months, and we're your legal guardians." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 10 years of silence, and now they wanted to play happy family? "I'm not going anywhere with you," I managed to say, my voice shaking with anger. Grandma Rose was my home. Now, Emma, Mom said, her voice taking on a stern edge I remembered from childhood. Don't be difficult. We're your parents. You have no choice in this matter. Actually, a deep voice interrupted, she has every choice. We turned to see a tall man in an expensive suit walking toward us, carrying a leather briefcase. I'm James Morrison, Rose Montgomery's attorney, and we need to have a conversation about your grandmother's will. My parents' expressions changed instantly. Mom's eyes lit up with barely concealed interest, while Dad straightened his tie nervously. Of course, he said smoothly. We're her only living relatives, after all. Mr. Morrison's face remained impassive. Let's step into the private room. There are some matters that need to be addressed immediately. As we followed him, I noticed my hand had moved to clutch the key necklace Grandma had given me. Somehow, I knew everything was about to change. Again, I just didn't realize how much. The private room at the church felt too small for the tension building inside it. Mr. Morrison sat across from us at a polished wooden table, methodically arranging papers from his briefcase. My parents flanked me like anxious vultures, trying to appear concerned while their eyes kept darting to the documents. Before we begin, Mr. Morrison said, adjusting his glasses, Miss Emma, would you please show me your necklace? My parents looked confused, but I reached for the key pendant Grandma had given me. Mr. Morrison nodded, a slight smile crossing his face. Perfect. Now let me read the terms of Rose Montgomery's will. He cleared his throat and began reading. I, Rose Montgomery, being of sound mind, declare this to be my last will and testament. The legal language washed over me until one sentence made my heart stop. To my beloved granddaughter, Emma Grace Montgomery, I leave my entire estate, including all properties, investments, bank accounts, and business holdings, currently valued at approximately $47 million. The room erupted in chaos. 47 million? Mom shrieked, her face turning red. That's impossible. Rose was a school principal. Dad slammed his hand on the table. This is ridiculous. We're her only children. You can't tell me she left everything to a teenager. Mr. Morrison remained calm. There's more. The will specifies that Emma is to be legally emancipated immediately, with a trust established in her name. The key she wears opens a safety deposit box containing additional documents and instructions. My head was spinning. $47 million? Grandma Rose, my modest, Toyota-driving grandmother, had been worth $47 million. This will is dated just last month, Mom said, her voice dangerous. We'll contest it. Emma's still a minor. We're her legal guardians, and we have rights. Actually, Mr. Morrison interrupted, you surrendered those rights 10 years ago. He pulled out another document. This is a copy of the abandonment charges Rose filed against you both after you left Emma. You never responded to the court summons, so she was granted full legal custody. You haven't been Emma's guardians for a very long time. I watched my parents' faces transform. The fake concern melted away, replaced by naked greed and fury. Emma, sweetie, Mom tried again, her voice honey-sweet. You don't understand what you're doing. Let us help you manage this. We're family. Family? The word felt like poison in my mouth. Where was family when you left me? Where was family for 10 years while Grandma Rose raised me? We made a mistake, Dad said quickly. We were young, struggling. But we're here now. We can make it right. Make it right? I stood up, shaking with anger. You're only here because you found out about the money. Did you even care that Grandma died? Did you ever care about me? Their silence was answer enough. Mr. Morrison cleared his throat. There's one more thing. Rose left a letter for you, Emma. He handed me a sealed envelope. She asked that you read it alone. I took the envelope and walked out, leaving my parents protesting behind me. Finding a quiet corner of the church, I opened the letter with trembling hands. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've just learned the truth about our family's wealth. I know it's a shock. I kept it secret for many reasons, but mostly to protect you and let you grow up understanding the value of hard work and kindness. I watched your parents choose money over love many times. They abandoned you because I refused to keep funding their extravagant lifestyle. They chose wealth over their own daughter, and in doing so, gave me the greatest gift, you. The key I gave you opens more than just a safety deposit box. It opens the door to your future. I've made arrangements for everything. The house is yours. Your college fund is secure. The family business awaits when you're ready. But most importantly, remember this. You are loved. Not for your inheritance, but for who you are. The same quiet strength that helped you survive being abandoned has prepared you to handle this responsibility. Don't let your parents manipulate you. They'll try, but you're stronger than they know. You're a Montgomery woman, and we don't break easily. All my love, Grandma Rose. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I finished reading. In death as in life, Grandma Rose was protecting me, guiding me, loving me. I touched the key around my neck, understanding finally flowing through me. When I returned to the private room, my parents were still arguing with Mr. Morrison about contesting a will. They fell silent when I walked in. Emma, Mom started, but I held up my hand. I want you to leave, I said, my voice steady. Both of you. You're not welcome here. Now listen here, Dad began angrily, but Mr. Morrison interrupted. Should I call security? He asked calmly. As the sole heir and property owner, Emma has the right to have you removed. They stared at me, these strangers who shared my blood, and I saw the moment they realized they'd lost. Not just the money, but any chance of manipulating me. This isn't over, Mom hissed as they gathered their things. You'll regret this. I watched them leave, feeling oddly peaceful. What happens now? I asked Mr. Morrison. He smiled. Now we visit that safety deposit box. Your grandmother left quite detailed instructions about the next steps. Shall we? As we left the church, I caught a glimpse of my parents in the parking lot, arguing furiously. They'd lost everything today. Not that they ever really had it. They'd chosen money over love once before, and that choice had finally caught up with them. I touched the key around my neck and smiled. Grandma Rose had given me more than just an inheritance. She'd given me the power to stand on my own, to face whatever came next. And something told me this was just the beginning. The safety deposit box at First National Bank contained exactly what Grandma Rose had promised, and so much more. As Mr. Morrison helped me go through the contents, I discovered just how thoroughly my grandmother had planned everything. Inside were property deeds, stock certificates, and detailed instructions about the family business, Montgomery Investments, a company I'd never even known existed. But what caught my eye was a USB drive labeled Watch Me First. Mr. Morrison pulled out his laptop, and Grandma Rose's face appeared on screen. She looked healthy, vibrant. This must have been recorded just before she died. Emma, my darling girl, she began, her familiar smile warming my heart. If you're watching this, then everything has happened as I expected. Your parents showed up at my funeral, didn't they? Trying to claim what was never theirs to begin with. I gasped. Even from beyond, she'd known exactly what would happen. You see, Emma, there's something you need to know about your parents. They didn't just abandon you. They tried to steal everything from me first. Your father, my own son, and your mother attempted to transfer all my assets to their names while I was on a business trip. They thought I was just a naive school principal. They never knew I was the one who built Montgomery Investments from the ground up. She paused, her expression hardening. When I discovered their scheme, I gave them a choice. Stay and live modestly while learning the value of hard work, or leave. They chose to leave. They left you behind thinking I'd come begging them to return. They never understood that by abandoning you, they gave up the greatest treasure of all. Tears streamed down my face as Grandma continued. I watched you grow into an extraordinary young woman. Kind, intelligent, hardworking. Everything they're not. That's why I know you're ready for this responsibility. The video continued with detailed instructions about the company, the properties, and most importantly, the charitable foundation she'd established. The Montgomery Foundation provides scholarships to abandoned children. You'll be its new director. Use our wealth to help others like yourself, Emma. That's our true legacy. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Mr. Morrison introduced me to the company's board of directors, who'd all known and respected Grandma Rose. They welcomed me warmly, ready to guide me as I learned the business. My parents didn't give up easily. They hired lawyers, tried to contest the will, even attempted to prove Grandma Rose was mentally unstable when she wrote it. But she'd been too thorough. Every document was in order, every decision legally sound. Their final attempt came 3 months later. They showed up at the Montgomery Investments office, causing a scene in the lobby. "We're her parents," Mom shouted as security held them back. "She can't keep us out." I met them calmly, dressed in one of Grandma's elegant suits, the key necklace still at my throat. "Actually, I can, and I will." We'll go to the press, Dad threatened. Tell everyone how you stole our inheritance. I smiled, channeling Grandma Rose's quiet strength. Go ahead. Tell them how you abandoned your 8-year-old daughter. Tell them how you tried to steal from your own mother. I'm sure the press will love that story. They deflated, finally understanding they'd lost everything, not just the money, but any chance of manipulating me. Goodbye, I said firmly. Don't come back. As I watched them leave, I touched the key around my neck, feeling Grandma's presence with me. That evening, I approved the first round of scholarships from the Montgomery Foundation. 20 children from broken homes would get a chance at a better life. Sitting in Grandma's old office, my office now, I looked at her photo on the wall and smiled. She'd given me more than just an inheritance. She'd given me purpose, strength, and the power to help others. The old Toyota still sits in my garage, even though I could afford any car I want. It reminds me of where I came from, of the humble, hard-working woman who taught me that true wealth isn't about money. It's about how you use it to make the world better. Sometimes I wear her old principal's blazer to board meetings. The board members who knew her smile when they see it. They understand. I'm not just Rose Montgomery's hair, I'm her legacy. As for my parents, I heard they moved to another state, telling anyone who will listen about their ungrateful daughter. But their words can't hurt me anymore. I know who I am. I'm Emma Grace Montgomery, and like my grandmother before me, I choose love over money, kindness over greed, and helping others over helping myself. That's what real family does.